What's your response to anxiety? Do you freeze up sometimes? Well, in addition to freezing up, there's also the fawn response. What's that about? Let's look at the fawn response in today's video. So depending on your childhood, what you've gone through in life, your body may try to protect you if it senses or perceives any danger lurking around the corner, something that you're afraid of. We generally understand the fight or flight or freeze response. So we either fight, which is not necessarily going to solve anything, right? Flight, we could run away. Freeze up, well, that's a big one for most of us. We hate that. Why couldn't I have the words when I needed them? We just stand there and stare, maybe like a deer in the headlights. Today, let's examine the fawn response a little bit more. Now, this is a broad topic, and first off, I'll say, of course, PTSD, where a lot of this stems from, can cover many incidents in one's life. Of course, we think of the big one as being going to war on the battlefield, that type of thing. But in a much more, perhaps less dramatic version, we can have this from a childhood, even if we're a victim of emotional incest, for example, where a parent just takes us over. It's no huge thing like a bomb going off on a battlefield, but living in this state every day can indeed cause one to have the 4 F's for the response. So with the fawn response, we immediately go into a people pleaser mode, trying to soothe things over. We can find the words for that right away. We may have a lot of words, but they're not authentic words. These are codependent, people pleaser, enmeshment type of responses where we turn ourselves perhaps symbolically inside out to appease the situation. Smooth things over. Of course, it's a great coping mechanism on one hand because the child is trying to avoid any possible conflict that they see perhaps coming up in a situation right in front of them. But unfortunately, it denies what the child is all about, right? It has nothing to do with their true feelings, that they're perhaps angry, terrified, unable to put up a healthy boundary with somebody maybe that's much older and bigger than them. So where this normally begins in childhood and sometimes is needed and can be helpful, the real problem becomes when we bring it into our adult life and it now becomes a pattern of relating to others. If you can do a gut check for this by asking yourself, do you follow more so what others think and want to do about a situation? And you don't really check in with yourself, and if you are aware of how you're feeling about something, you may repress those thoughts and feelings and not want to say anything verbally. And maybe you can't even identify your feelings because feelings were not safe in childhood. You certainly couldn't express them probably. So now somebody raised like this in a tense situation as an adult may immediately go into the fawn response. Big time people pleaser mode. So the fawn response is very understandable in terms of what was needed in childhood. Perhaps you lived in a home with a lot of unpredictable chaos, a parent who beat you, a drunken mother. Of course, it would feel safer to just try to please the abuser at that time. But we really want to work with this as adults because we don't need to keep doing this for the rest of our lives. The first thing is to develop the insight that that's even going on. You can do a gut check with yourself about that. And then if saying no to somebody is a big challenge, practice what it's like to say no. Because of a lack of boundaries, perhaps you've taken on more than you can handle from someone, then you're going to have to start setting boundaries where you don't just take on other people's stuff. You feel really uncomfortable giving an opinion somewhere, maybe you're asked directly. The fawn response would be to say, well, I don't really have too much to say about this topic. But as you're practicing, find your opinion, your true thought, your authentic self, and share your opinion. It's going to feel probably majorly uncomfortable as you begin this process because you're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're not supposed to be doing anything that really allows there to be a real you there. That was knocked down big time in childhood, so it's going to bring up probably some childhood fears, and it's good if it does because it gives us something really to look at and examine. You can really see more clearly what it was like for you in childhood, how scary it was. But now as an adult, it's safe for you to work through this. You'll be talking yourself through this, or even better, working with a therapist on this. And you may catch yourself slipping over sometimes depending on what's coming up into the fight or flight or freeze response as well. This is all about noticing, not judging yourself. This is a response to childhood trauma, likely, and now you're working with it as an adult. The fawn response may not be talked about as much as the other 3 F's, That's why we need to bring it more into the spotlight, talk about it a little bit more, because it's a real thing. I think there may be some confusion about it because people think maybe it's more of the person's personality as opposed to the other 3 F's, fight, flight, or freeze. But a fawn response is something that's learned. It can go very deep. It's a coping mechanism that sometimes children need to rely on for years to make themselves feel safe. But now as an adult, you can begin working on this. Now this usually stems from some type of childhood where the child is a victim of some sort of abuse. So with the authority figure in their life, i.e. the parents, the child has learned that they don't want to make things worse. They're walking on eggshells. Now, in a way, this is a preemptive strike, right? To hopefully avoid any more abuse, depending on what the abuse is. You go into a role of saying anything that this parent wants to hear. You're agreeable, saying anything to make them feel good. So out of the 4 F's, which one do you rely on mostly in your life, would you say? Please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below about this. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.